So in Greece, that is different, and even in other places it might change. But for the moment, that conjuncture in Greece is quite unique. So it might, of course, influence people. And you know, when people say on the front page of Le Monde that there's a huge poster on the Acropolis, which is pretty symbolic, saying that peoples of Europe rise up, you know, signed Communist Party of Greece, Kappa Kappa Epsilon, you know, with a hammer and sickle. That is something we haven't seen in a long, long time. You know, that really the major symbols of the Western world, your Acropolis, okay, being a background to a communist-led resistance. Extraordinary. But I don't think that this will launch a total transformation of the political landscape. But it will show one very modest but important thing, that is possible.
Can you comment on the European Union, especially European Union as a neoliberal project and the lack of democracy in the European Union?
Well, you know, it's ironic to speak of lack of democracy in the European Union because it's not a democracy. So therefore, you know, democracy is not lacking. It just does not obtain. It's not there. After all, this is an organization that is led by unelected bodies, and so much unelected bodies that their tenure is very long too. And I am very doubtful anyway about the idea of the independence of banks. But you know, national banks still are somehow, you know, under the indirect influence of their electorate, because governments want to be re-elected and will find a way to influence banks. But the European Central Bank, you know, who influences those, and the European Commission and so on and so forth, of course, are not responsible to anybody. That's one thing. Secondly, the legal instruments, the constitutional texts, documents of the European Union had increasingly been reactionary. In the first, you know, there's a statement in the Lisbon Treaty summarizing the core values and legal principles of the European Union. What is the number one? It's competition. It's competition. It is a more aggressively market system than any nation, any member state's system. So the European Union is basically, it has remained the common market, but a common market now strengthened by an immense political power that is anti-democratic in its nature because it's not responsible. You know, the oldest institution of democracy, of elective democracy, is of course the responsibility of the government to its legislative body who elected them, and periodically to the electorate. Even that can be fraudulent and so on and so forth, but still it's a last guarantee, a last chance for the populations to say something. In the European Union, this last chance doesn't exist, and which is shown now when in the Greek crisis, everybody is made to suffer. The Greeks are made to suffer because of the austerity measures and the terrible social cuts, but also the rich countries, because they have to give some money, but who do they give the money to? Do they give it to the Greek people? Of course not. They'll give it to the creditors of Greece. In other words, to the banks that have, you know, bad loans in Greece. So, you know, and this is decided by the leading powers in the European Union without not only without consulting populations, but even informing them. You know, most German voters today think that their money will go towards the salaries and the pensions of the Greek. But not one penny will go to the salaries and pensions. And there's no bloody German newspaper pointing out on page 1 that this is not so. That this will be going to Raiffeisen Bank or whatever. I shouldn't say the name of the bank, and they even don't know whether they play a role. But anyway, I don't want you to be, you know, sued and charged. And so that shows too that the European Union, when really puts its mind to something, can do whatever it wants. And of course it's it's an international police state. It has this irresponsible, now they want a new gendarmerie that can intervene in situations of problematic immigration scandals. They have this anti-immigration network, they have this common police. Now they want to find a common intelligence service. You know, that's the latest I've read in today's newspaper. They want a common intelligence. What? Intelligence services are anyway a source of danger for democracy, but let alone an intelligence service that is responsible to an irresponsible body, you know. And I know that in Croatia, of course, I know that I'm talking to Croatian friends in this interview. There are illusions that have something to do rather with the Yugoslav past, I mean the Yugoslav war past, than to anything else. And, you know, after all, the southern Slav states have been pariah states. They had been considered long unstable and unworthy of a noble order of rich and peaceful countries. And at the same time, of course, now that Croatia has become quieter and richer, it's a question of dignity, to be received in the best club and be considered one of the normal parts of the world. Psychologically, this is absolutely understandable. People don't want to be like Macedonia and like Montenegro. They want to be like Austria and Luxembourg and Switzerland, which of course is a dream. You know, Croatia will never be like Switzerland, because it's just not in you to be like the Swiss, which may be a good thing actually. But nevertheless, this desire for normality and peace after all these tragedies, well, of course, that's understandable. But it has very, very little in common with the reality of the European Union. So I wish you to, if the Croatian people wants to join the European Union, by all means, let's join it. But after a few years, when people will forget this question of national dignity, which is a serious matter, I'm not despising that, and when this will pass, then the European everyday will come with the euro and the concomitant price rises and this non-transparent institutional order that slows everything down, that makes responsibility relationships opaque and vague, and you know, and this is anyway a problem in lesser developed countries, that responsibility relationships and clear hierarchies and clear responsibilities are not there. And the European Union is an absolute curse for that, you know, because there are the two layers, legislations, and it's a very good example of what happened in Hungary, which is a full member